Hello, welcome to the While We Were Silent project. Our guest today is Alani. Welcome, Alani.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to have Alani for this interview today. I'm going to read you Alani's bio, and then we'll jump right into the interview. Alani, the Freedom Igniter, is on a divine assignment and mission. She has survived family sexual abuse and is also recently divorced from her best friend of more than 22 years. But she has found a way to overcome these difficulties. She wants to share her emotional healing process to help people live a fruitful and productive life. Alani holds a BS in psychology and MA in human resources management and a franchise owner certificate. Alani speaks, writes, and advocates liberation and non-oppression. Her first published work, her book, A Family Secret Revealed More Than a Story, empowers individuals to stop emotional pain and take responsibility for their healing. Alani helps people seek freedom from bondage and move from tragedy to triumphancy. Welcome, Alani. Again, if we can just jump right into the interview, can you begin by telling us about your story and how it led you to doing what you're doing today?
Sure. I will start by saying that as a young girl, I was sexually violated by a family member for a very, very long time. And it took me probably 20 years or so to come to a place where I could even say the word incest and not feel a certain disdain about me personally. I got through that and life continued on and progressed, and I fell in love and married my understanding best friend. And after 22 years of between courtship and marriage, he decided that he wanted to do different things. And what came after that was an unexpected separation and divorce. I was not supposed to have been violated by a family member. I was not supposed to have been, I hate to use that term, dumped, but that was not supposed to happen, but it did. And it reminds me, actually, those two stories remind me of a quote by Virginia Satter, who says, life is not the way it's supposed to be. It's the way it is.
Wow.
But how you cope with it is what makes the difference. And I can truly say that how I coped with both of these very tragic events in my life is really squared up in my strong belief and relationship in God. And everything it is that I do is God inspired.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I love that quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very powerful. So,
Yeah.
Alani, can you tell us what it is that you do to help others?
Yeah. What I've done recently, it's interesting that Alani started off going in one direction, as you heard in the beginning with the incest, but after this last event, it grew into something else. I started when I on this journey helping individuals who had either been victimized or those that were perpetrators, or those that were the spouses of either the victims or the perpetrators. And during this time, I had self-published this first book. I did speaking engagements, mostly at churches. I did one-on-one coaching, counseling with individuals. I volunteered on a crises hotline. I did what I called a cup of healing, where I had gone to a number of little coffee shops or little delis, and while giving little samples of coffee or whatever it was they wanted to provide, I would offer a cup of healing by way of talking about incest. I also wrote, produced, and facilitated the Alani Show on Blog Talk Radio. So all of those things I had done, and then life happened. And I was stopped in my tracks as I was dealing with a tragedy that I didn't see coming, and that was the eventual separation and divorce, as I had just mentioned. And, while working through my hurt and my rejection, I realized that the work for Alani was beginning to expand. And it occurred to me that there were others who could benefit from the message of love, compassion, forgiveness, and healing that I was sharing with my original audience. So, while my message has not changed drastically, the audience has, a little. So I was still doing speaking engagements after that tragic event had happened. And I had also begun to do some training of counselors. I know a young lady that has a program where she helps women to rebuild their life after divorce. And she had a couple of women who had experienced having been violated from someone in their family, and she thought immediately of Alani. And so I do that now. Whenever they bring on additional counselors, I go and I instruct the counselors on things to look for and how to make a connection with those that may have experienced incest. The ultimate goal of where I am now is really to help people to take ownership and responsibility for their healing. We find ourselves in a position, having been emotionally hurt, sometimes by the choices that we make, sometimes having been victimized by circumstance, sometimes because there are just really mean and malicious people out there who want to cause us harm. But at the end of the day, we are responsible for our own healing. I also, in terms of my goal, want people to not only discover, but also begin to operate in their God-given inspired purpose. I do believe that we all have something on this earth that we're supposed to do. Sometimes because of what happens in our emotional pain, we are not able to focus on that. And so I do help individuals to come to recognize what that is. At the end of the day, I believe that we all can live a fruitful and productive life in spite of having experienced emotional hurt and pain. I was going to save this more for the end, and we can talk about it again at that point too. But one of the latest programs that I have put together, in fact, last night was my closing night. And you can find information about this on the website. But it's called the Bridge Program, and it is helping people go from tragedy to triumphancy. And it is a 8-week program, starting out with the bridge. B stands for breaking ground. And then there's root defining, there's inner assessing, there's discovering, there's growing, and there's executing. And so I take people through a number of exercises, activities. I give them homework assignments. And it's very important for me to help people not just be in a place where they're telling their story again for the 100th time. We have to get to a place where we can move beyond that. Balance is very important. We understand that there are certain things that you go through to get through the hurt, to get through the pain, but then there's action that has to happen. And so that is what this Bridge program is all about. And one of the ladies who at the end of the night last night came up to me at the end and was in tears. And she said, "You will never know what you have done to help me." with this
Wow.
program. And I just thank you so much for taking the time and writing and pulling this program together. And I will tell you, it's been a 10-year journey, really, with Alani, having started in one direction and then life happening. And then I had to sort of backpedal, put it on the back burner, and then bring it full circle again. So it's been a labor of love for a decade.
Yeah.
And
Alani, can I ask you a question?
certainly.
When you said at the end of that execute, that E, that it's a time to take action, can you give an example of what you mean by that?
Yes. What happens is I want people to be able to take a good look in the mirror. One of the questions that you had asked before too is about what it is what advice, what would you say to someone who is suffering in silence? Part of that has to do with making goals, creating goals for yourself. I think that is very important. And I also had just mentioned balance. Someone may, well, I will tell you that there was an individual that said, "Oh, I thought I was healed." But having gone through some of these exercises that we went through, she realized that there's still work that she has to do. And I do believe that healing is ongoing. Healing, I don't know that we ever reach a full plateau of healing.
Right.
A specific example of that. Everybody is going to be different. Even two people that experience the same thing is going to have a different outcome. And what works for one person may not work for another person. So, it really does depend. But putting into action really has to do with doing more than telling the story, looking yourself in the mirror and being honest about what you see and, recognizing that you need help and recognizing and owning that and stop making excuses. And those are the types of things. So I don't have a specific concrete because I say everybody's going to be different.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's helpful, though. Helpful. Okay. So there's a number of things. I was actually taking notes as you were talking, but I think I'm going to ask this next question and then come back to something you just said there. Okay. So the next question is about remaining silent. You're mentioning in your program about telling your story. A lot of people have a really hard time. I don't know if this is what you do in your step of breaking ground, but having a really hard time of, what I've been calling breaking through the walls of silence to actually speak up and to tell the story and to begin even to themselves, to, look in the mirror and be honest with themselves and break through that silence to start the healing. In your experience, as well as your work with others, what do you see as the main reason that people stay silent?
I think that there is at the base a fear of something, a fear of exposing, a fear of destroying a family, a fear of not being believed, a fear of people saying that you're the reason that it happened or that you allowed it to happen. Some kind of fear, I think, is the basis. People, want to avoid being victimized all over again. So you just don't say anything. I know for me personally, I did mention this at the onset, I remained silent for so long because I just had a hard time saying the word incest. I had a hard time saying family sexual abuse. And if there was any inclination that a conversation was going in that direction, I was headed in the other direction. I had vowed that I was taking everything with me to my grave. I never imagined writing a book that talks about, there's a lot of graphic information that I revealed in this book. I didn't tell everything that happened, but I told enough to give a sense that, there's really graphic things. And I never imagined that I would. Um, but, you know, um, in addition to just holding on to that, I just felt a certain, I don't know, I can't even describe it. It was like a disdain or an uncomfortability that I had with myself, just not wanting to talk about it, not wanting to address it. And again, just not wanting to be victimized all over again. So I
Mm-hmm.
left it alone.
Mm-hmm. So did you, and I mean, if you have more to say about that, I'll leave that open for you, but did you, like, what were you experiencing that led you to change that, to decide to speak, to decide to write?
Honestly, I think that came from a higher power. I have a very strong belief in God. I have a very strong relationship with God, and I'll tell you this story. I don't know. Some people believe, some people don't. This was my experience. I remember one morning in 2007, it was in the fall, and I was awakened by the ceiling fan over my bed, and it sounded like a time clock. And it was the chain, it was the blade hitting the chain as it was going around. And I heard God's voice very distinctly say 2 words to me: it's time. I had absolutely no idea what that was. And to this
However,
day,
you briefly said that, and it felt like it totally landed in me when you said that.
yes,
Felt it.
yes, it's time. And I'm still on a quest trying to fully put my head around exactly what that means. But I knew that I needed to do something. My husband at the time, shared with him. I mean, he was there. He didn't experience what I experienced, but he,
Mm-hmm.
heard what I went through. And I shared with him that, I felt like I needed to do something. I don't know exactly what, but it was just an impression in me to do something. And that following spring, that's when I had that conversation with my then husband. And it would be a few months later that I would begin to put pencil to paper. And I just wrote all kinds of things, whatever, came out on paper. And what resulted was this book and, a couple programs. I had, created a nonprofit organization that it didn't go into fruition because while all of these things were being, I'm calling, downloaded to me,
Mm-hmm.
as I said, there was an interruption with my then husband who made a different decision, and everything I was doing was, the brakes were put on, and, but it didn't die. Alani was buried for a little bit. And it's very interesting because even while I was in that period where I was not actively doing anything with Alani, I was still doing things with Alani because there was still information that I felt was being downloaded. And I'm saying, God, when am I going to do this? I am working a full-time job. I manage a commercial cleaning company with 18 contracts and 25 employees. And, I'm a single mom and all of these things going on. And I'm just like, I don't know how I'm going to get this done. But I just kept writing everything down that would be sent. So that was kind of the onset of, when things began to change and shift for me.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. What a gift. And so then, Alani, during that period of silence,
Mhm.
looking back from where you are now, what do you recognize as the consequences of living with that unhealed trauma? And again, that can be for your experience with yourself as well as the other people that you work with.
Yeah. I think that we don't really get to know or understand our real, authentic selves when we are holding on and not breaking through and taking a step toward healing. You know, we're living with a mask on, we're living with, with a Band-Aid on, and we're not really fully exposed to our potential, to our full potential. And I really think like the greatest opportunity for healing lies in what I described earlier as love, compassion, and forgiveness, because in my estimation, all three of those lead to healing. The way I like to think of it is when we get to a place where we really and truly understand what love is all about, and we truly begin to operate in love, I think something releases on the inside of us. And when we do that, when we can operate in love, then compassion is easy once you know how to love. You know, compassion for yourself, compassion toward other people. And when you can get to a place where you love and you show compassion, forgiveness is easy. It's
Yeah.
easier. It happens in steps. You know, you hear people all the time say, you know, you have to forgive. Yes, that is true, but it doesn't happen instantaneously. I believe that there are steps that you have to take to get there that start with love. And then next is compassion, and you move on to forgiveness. And ultimately, you're on a road that's going to lead you to heal. Again, I don't know that we ever are 100% healed in our natural beings. It's almost like if you can imagine, and I've done this particular exercise. If you take a piece of paper and you either crumble it or you fold it, and however many times you fold it, or you rip it in shreds and then you try to put it back together. In some cases, you can re-engineer what you've done with that paper, but it will never, ever be 100% what it was before. It may
Right.
break in the same places that it broke before or ripped before, but it's never going to look like it was never touched. So being 100% healed, I don't know if we are ever there in the natural. It's a constant, ongoing work for us to do, I believe.
Yeah.
So, I also believe that everything happens for a reason. And I also believe that there is a time and a place for everything, including our healing. I think that it might be possible if we force our healing that we might miss something vital.
Mm.
Um, I believe that experience and just living life, the older you get, the more you understand, you know, the more revelations come to you. All of those things, I think, play a role in our healing as well.
Alani, I really appreciate what you're sharing. And I think now is a good time to go back to one of the questions I wrote down earlier.
Mhm.
You mentioned that you help people, other therapists, to understand you teach them about how to make a connection with someone who's been violated. Can you say some words about that? Can you give us some tips about that?
Yeah, what I do want to make a correction about is these are not therapists. They are not
Okay.
licensed in any way. They are women who have also been through divorce. This ministry that they work through, how do I say? They are there as a resource for women, but they are not clinical.
Okay.
So just so that we're clear about that.
Yeah, thank you. And so this is when you were working with more of the divorced people than the violation, or is it both?
It's both. It's people
Okay.
who have been divorced, who have gone through this particular program, rebuilding your life after divorce, and the founder of this organization, this ministry, has a series of trainings that she does for her counselors, and
Okay.
it does so happen that she and I think a couple of the other counselors was working with a woman, couple women who brought that up, that's something
Okay.
that they were dealing with. And she says, oh my goodness, it might be a good idea to have the counselors have some understanding about what it is.
I'm
Um,
so glad that they recognize that because, with the statistics of 1 in 4 women under
mhm,
the age of 18, that is, and 1 in 6 men under the age of 18,
mhm.
it's, it sounds like that this kind of training can be beneficial for anyone who does any kind of counseling work.
Yes. And it's I believe that too. And also my giving the information, I'm not a clinician, even though I hold a degree in psychology, I don't practice that.
Hmm.
Um, what I do share with them is, what is incest from my perspective, and we review some facts. We talk about some common characteristics of family sexual abuse. I also spend some time talking to them about detecting incest, addressing it, what are some possible effects of incest, and then building relationships with the women that they're counseling or helping through this divorce. As you well know, or possibly know, there are people who have been violated as children who never say anything, even to their spouse.
Yes.
Sometimes that's the reason for the divorce. Sometimes people just don't deal with it. And
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah. Sometimes the person they need to say it to, or that they're not saying it to, is themselves.
yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Which for me, that was my 20-year thing.
Hmm.
I couldn't say it. I couldn't say it. I couldn't deal with it. It was too painful. And so I get that. But yeah, that's kind of the perspective. It's short, sweet, just gives them a little insight. And I always, of course, tell them in terms of a resource is to reach out to someone who is in the clinical field, who specializes in abuse situations, violation situations, and refer that individual there if they want to seek out additional clinical help.
Nice. Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
So once that silence has been broken and someone steps on that healing journey, what do you feel is the greatest opportunity for them to realize in their lives?
Wow, there's a lot of work that they still have to do, that there's work for them. And this, I think, kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier in terms of finding their purpose. Once they can get on this path um, of healing and being able to recognize their true authentic self, um, they will hopefully go to a place where they can recognize, what, there's a contribution that I can make to society. And so, that's what I believe is the greatest opportunity that people can hope for.
Beautiful. So that's in recognizing, wait, I do have something to give. I
Yeah,
am of value. I do have a place and a purpose. Yeah.
absolutely. Now, I will say to you, I wrote an affirmation, and this was more so for my divorce situation than it was my family sexual abuse situation, but the same kind of concept applies. I was dealing with, very deep hurt and rejection. And I know that I am a person of value, but when you experience that kind of thing, it has a way of tearing you down on the inside. So what I did was I wrote a poem, an affirmation that I have plastered in my bathroom, plastered in my bedroom as a reminder. And it says, "This is me from A to Z. I am amazing and bodacious. I am confident and desirable. I am eloquent and fun. I am God's beloved. I am happy and intelligent. I am joy-filled and knowledgeable. I am love. I am a masterpiece and nurturing. I am an overcomer and a phenomenal woman. I am Queen Bee, as in beautiful, inside and out. I am resilient and I am spiritual. I am a treasure and unique. I am valuable and extraordinary. I am youthful and I am zealous. This is me from A to Z."
That is beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'm really impressed that you memorized that whole thing. And thank you for sharing it.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes. I encourage, it's really important no matter what, challenge you face in life. And even if everything on that list, and this was an exercise that I had given in the bridge program as part of the homework. Every night that we met, I said, find 5 adjectives, that describe your ideal self. So even if it's not everything that you are, if it's everything that you're striving to be, and you continue to tell yourself that and recite that, it becomes part of you. And you will eventually live that. And the more positive you give yourself, the better off that you're going to be, and help to move those negative things out of the way.
Yes. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So Alani, could you share with us any insights that you have about what's shifting in our collective right now, in our masses? We're in some shifting grounds now. A lot of the things changing with so many people coming forward after having been silent for so long.
Yeah.
And it's really changing things in the mass consciousness, as well as, there's this upheaval in the culture.
Yeah.
What insights do you have to share about that?
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, just experience and living life does open our hearts and open our minds to believing that, there's more to life than just, what I'm presently living. Sometimes I think people have an aha moment, a revelation of sorts. Sometimes we can hear the same message over and over again, but it's not until the 10th time that it actually registers. Sometimes, when we hear the stories of other people, I think that's helpful. Sometimes we feel compelled, as was my case, and inspired by something greater than ourselves. And everybody is different. So, there's no cookie cutter sort of expectation, but, I do believe that, that there is much to be gained.
Yeah. Beautiful. So as you're saying that, and, getting a feel for your belief in God, and your, the word that comes to me is reliance on God's divine orchestration, if you will.
Yes.
And I just kind of having this visual of, there is a grand orchestration that is moving through our culture, through our world, and each one of us is going to have a different perspective on it, depending on where we are and what lenses we're looking through, and what relationship we have to it.
Yes.
So we're going to have a different experience of it, a different perspective of it. We're going to be in different places with it, but ultimately there is a grand orchestration that's moving through. So
Yes.
it's just kind of visualizing, if you will, or feeling as you were saying that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I definitely believe that to be the case. And there is a higher power. I know people have a different way of believing and thinking, but there is something greater than any of us here.
Yeah.
And, I think it benefits us to be in tune with that.
Yes.
I
would agree with that, and with
Yeah.
gratitude, because we, on our own, I think, on our own, we would certainly mess things up even worse than we have. And so,
I tell you, it's interesting you say that, because there's so many people when they finish hearing of all of the things that I find myself involved in, first of all, they're like, okay, I'm exhausted just listening. Secondly, where do you get the energy? How do you do? It is not me. Yes, as you said, if I relied on myself to get things done, I wouldn't get things done.
Yeah.
It's definitely something bigger than me.
Yes, and apparent that it is moving through you in some beautiful ways. Thank you for being that conduit for it in that channel.
To God be the glory, because I tell you, 10 years ago, I called what I was doing, I was on a divine assignment.
Yes. Yes.
A divine assignment, and I'm still on that assignment. And it changes, I have learned through the years that, and it's really interesting, because I was one of those people who was very rigid and structured and organized, and that's my personality, and I am still like that to an extent, but I also recognize that I can't be used and have God kind of orchestrate things if I'm not flexible. So I learned to adjust and kind of go. I started out one way with Alani, but that's not where I am now. And if that's where I'll be 2 years from now, I don't know. I'm here for the ride, wherever I feel inspired to go. And it lines up with what I believe my purpose is. I'm all aboard.
Awesome. I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I'm the same way. People say, well, wait a minute, where are you going? What are you doing? It's like, well, it's all still the same. Yes. But, there's this kind of like directing it wherever it's needed based on guidance, right? And sometimes it might look a little different, but it's the same. So, like, it's just the purpose that it's serving in the moment shifts. Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one on that.
Yes. But you are not alone. No, you're not.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. Okay. So, with regards to our future, and I ask this question because I think it can, sometimes we get stuck with that. Well, what difference will it make if I keep my stuff inside, or if I step on a healing path and, begin to change myself? But as this, we're kind of making it safer. Maybe in a sense, all of this stuff that's coming up is making it safer for more people to speak up, even if it is only to themselves, only to their mirror, and begin to open up and to step on a healing path to heal what they've been carrying inside. What do you see as what's possible for our future as more and more people start to heal?
That was a hard question for me to answer, because on one hand, I do believe that there are certain ills in our society that will always be, and we'll spend a lifetime trying to understand the why. Yet on the other hand, when we work together in spite of not understanding the why, this is when we can perhaps witness the epitome of triumph.
Wow.
I would hope that the future offers us a quest to never stop trying to get it right, to continue to seek acceptance and mutual, respect and harmony. Kind of how I see that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So, Alani, what would you tell someone, that one person that's listening right now, that's watching you, that is perhaps still struggling in silence or just stepping a foot on that healing path? What would you say to them?
There's a couple of things that come to mind. The first thing is about patience, being patient, not only with yourself, but with others. Those that have to interact with you while you're going through, be patient with them as they're being patient with you. You want to be open. I think it's very important not to be closed-minded, to be open. I think it's important, and I talked about this earlier, setting goals for yourself and sticking to those goals. I talked about this before too, and that's recognizing balance. It is important to work through your hurt, and working through that is going to be different for everybody. But working through and overcoming, there are two different things, and you don't want to spend all of your time, working through without overcoming. There's there's work involved in overcoming, as I just spoke of. There's more to healing than retelling your story, as I mentioned earlier. Repeatedly, you have work that you have to do, and just be mindful of that. I think it's very important to lose the victim mentality. Be conscious and recognize if you're manipulating people and or situations, and stop doing that. One of the things that I had written in the book, I had come to realize about a year afterwards that I should have done something different, and it was use a specific term, and that was victim. I realized, don't use the term victim, because people will associate that mentality. And so instead of saying victim, I say person who has been victimized. And so really important to not associate yourself with that term. I think the other thing, which I have spoken of a couple of times already, is seeking out and beginning to operate in your God-given purpose. Those are things that I think are very, very important for individuals that are struggling right now.
Awesome. I love that. And, that seeking of that purpose, believing that you have a purpose, beginning to feel that spark inside of you and know that it's real and it's credible, and you can feel it and you can listen to it, and you can, let it grow inside of you, and let that be like a guiding light that carries you through. Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. One of the things that I shared in this last bridge group, for those that kind of thought they had their purpose, not exactly sure. I said, it's amazing that when we go through challenges in life, sometimes our purpose lies there, and finding a cure for something, or, being transparent for someone, who's dealing with what you dealt with. This has ended up being my passion. I never, when I was a little girl, said I want to, grow up and, do the work that Alani is doing. No, it
Right.
happened as a result of life happening, and recognizing that I am not the only person. I'm not special in that regard. There are lots of people who have experienced what I have and worse. But I just recognize that, living in this world, it's not about me. It's about helping other people. And I think if people stop and take a look there, it may give them some indication of what their purpose is. And the other thing I say, as we were kind of talking about this orchestrating and kind of moving, it's not, I don't believe in many cases that your purpose just falls in your lap. Sometimes you have to get up, you have to go out, you have to try things, you have to ask questions, and then you find yourself on a road and then the aha moment comes. Oh, okay, well, this is the direction I'm supposed to go in. This is where my purpose is. So, I recognize that it's not easy, and I recognize that people struggle sometimes with trying to figure out what their purpose is, but, don't ever stop searching. Don't ever stop asking the questions. Don't sit down and just wait for it to fall in your lap, because that's not going to happen either.
Yeah. It's an exchange.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So, Alani, if people are wanting to connect with you and take their next step or just learn more about you, how can they find you or learn more about you?
Yes, two ways. The website is alani.org, which is ALANI.org. Or on Facebook, they can find me at Alani, the Freedom Igniter.
Nice.
Okay.
Excellent.
I did have one other thing that I wanted to share really quickly.
Absolutely, yes.
I wanted to read a very quick chapter, very short chapter.
Absolutely.
In the book, Family Secret Revealed More Than a Story. This was released in April of 2012. And it's chapter 12, titled Silent Pain. My emotions had been trampled into the ground. I didn't have any more to give. I had officially reached rock bottom. And as the hallucinations increased and magnified, I had no one to talk to about my emotional state and my gruesome, overwhelming, silent pain. While my best friend knew of my many struggles, even he could not fill this void. There were simply some things that were too painful to address and to share with him. My dad's voice, ringing in my ear from one of our notorious phone fights, was ever present. Like my shadow following me on a city-lit sidewalk at sunset, it wouldn't go away. Like a constant drip from a leaky faucet in the middle of the night, keeping me awake, it was there. Everywhere I went, every place I turned, landed me face to face with drips, shadows, voices. I tried to shut my dad's voice off in my mind, but his yelling and constant nagging weighed heavy on every fiber of my being. The strange thing was that this was somewhat familiar scenery. I had been here before, at least in the same neighborhood. This was not the first time I hallucinated. The difference this time was the intensity. The yelling was louder and more piercing. The nagging, stronger and more pronounced. The drips, the shadows, my dad's voice, more intense. In addition to the hallucinations, I began to question my own actions. Why was I allowing this to continue to happen to me? What was it about me that let this go on? What was I really afraid of? These were all questions to which I had no answers. As the thoughts and questions permeated my consciousness, I reasoned a warm bath would ease my mind. So to the bathroom I went to prepare for this cleansing, pouring smell goods under the running hot water. At just the right moment, I stepped in and took my place in temporary comfort and relaxation. Not long after I closed my eyes to settle in, the bad thoughts resurfaced. And as if a weight was tied around my neck, slowly I sank, sliding further under the water until finally my face was submerged. I have no idea how long I stayed under the water in that position, and I have no recollection of what got me to rise up out of it. All I remember is that in a quick flash, I shot up out of that tub face first, gasping for air as my heart was beating out of my chest cavity. Because I could not handle my intense thoughts, I unintentionally exposed myself to an extremely unhealthy situation that could have been fatal. I could have died that night in my suffering silent pain, but God said, "Not so. You shall live." To God be the glory. I thank him for his grace and mercy and for saving my life. I didn't run that bath water with the intention of trying to kill myself. I am just so grateful to God for the strength to rise. Even though life after this point certainly had its ups and downs, the downs have never led me down that road again. My emotions since that time and ability to cope were more in control. There were no more intensified hallucinations. God is so good. I am better, stronger, and wiser. I am not forever broken, for I have become unshattered.
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much, Alani, for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, if that has touched you, by all means, jump into our Facebook group and connect with Alani at While We Were Silent is the name of the group on Facebook. So click the link and join us there. Tag Alani and, give her your questions, any ahas, anything you've received from this. Please share if you feel so called. Let me say that. This is not a compulsion. We'd love to everybody's journey is different and there's no compulsion to, you must break silence. You must have, you must share. So I don't want to make it sound like that's the case, but the invitation is there. The door is open for you to just share even a wow or a thank you or whatever it is, just anything that's come to your heart. You're welcome to join us while we were silent. And thank you again for being a part of this program. Alani, thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed my time today.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.